Cause I can read between the lines, I ain't blind. We unwind what they're really saying, genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics, keep the beta in stasis. Pay the stake, kid, you're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogue Ways, a visitor from afar comes to regale us with tales of a lifetime of travel and intrigue, as well as a view of the highly strange aspects of our experience that often befuddle us. Currently residing in the North Indian state of, I'm going to hopefully not butcher this, Himachal Pradesh. Is that close? It's close, okay. Yep. Born in South Korea and having grown up in North America, Nachiketa is sure to broaden our horizons, and we are so lucky to have him. Welcome to Rogue Ways, Nachiketa. It's nice to have you.
Pleasure to have me.
Yes, I like that.
Being here.
That's just like, that's the ultra confident response right there. It is a pleasure to have me. That's right. I love it. Well, before we get started, I like to remind everybody that if they would like more content from me, they can check out rogueways.org. There's all kinds of written photography, books, all kinds of stuff, tarot readings, so go check it out. And if you would like to exchange value for value and you have enjoyed Rogue Ways, please consider subscribing at subscribestar.com/rogue-ways. I appreciate all of you Roguesters out there that support, and that is great. And so, Nachiketa, we always start on Rogue Ways with a pointless question of the episode. And so my pointless question for you is, what is your favorite place on Earth and why?
Here.
Right here?
Here's my favorite place on Earth.
I love that.
Right where I am.
That's a beautiful answer. And profound in many ways. It's like, no matter where you go, here is the favorite place.
That's right. That's
awesome.
We are always going to be where we are. I mean, that's just a matter of this, and the past is the past. What can you do? I mean, there are a lot of great places I've been. I traveled around. I was born in Korea. I grew up in America. There are a lot of beautiful places in America. And, actually one of my really fond memories I had was in the Adirondacks in upper state of New York. So I spent a year there Adirondacks in the it's a kind of a state park area in New York, and I spent about a year there. So I have some good memories there as well. But a lot of other places. I spent another 10 years in Korea.
Wow.
After I graduated university, so a lot of great places in this world.
Yes.
But here, where we are, that's where we are.
I love it.
Might as well enjoy it.
Absolutely. Make it the best you can be and be as fully in touch with it as you can. Well, that's awesome. Well, so you have a very interesting past, and we're probably going to touch on a lot of it, but I'm wondering, because I like to start off with people just kind of like, where did you come from? Like, what was your early life like? I like to trace like the route, like how did you get here now?
Yeah, and this is something that I think about quite often, and I think people kind of do take it for granted where they come from and how they come to be who they are, really.
Yeah.
I was born in South Korea.
Wow.
And I grew up in a very, let's say, difficult, circumstances where, I was raised by a single parent, kind of.
Yeah.
Like my mother left soon after I was born.
No.
And it happens. It's not the only story regarding that, right?
Right.
So my father attempted to raise me by himself, but he had diabetes most of my memory. So I was basically in many different types of foster care, from uncles and aunts and grandparents to my father's friends. And so I was basically being bounced around a lot. My father passed away when I was about 8. and I was with my uncle, who was a younger brother of my father, and he had like one room. He was poor. He
Yeah.
had a wife and two kids, and then he had one more mouth to feed, and I didn't really feel welcome there. And
Oh,
especially after my father passed, I just decided to not come home from school one day,
wow.
and one day became two, and 2 days became a week, and a week became, several months. So I lived out in the streets for a
Wow.
while,
And this is when you
and
were 8 years old?
yeah, yeah, almost nine. Like I would
Wow.
say, like my memory is not, but before nine, um, yeah. So I was quite. I only had a T-shirt and shorts on me, and I was just kind of like this like dirty little kid running around, hanging out at arcade centers because that's where all the kids go.
Yeah.
That's where the kid can feel safe hanging out and stealing stuff. When he can,
Yeah.
and so then I got picked up by a police. Somebody dragged me basically. Somebody caught me, dragged me, and took me to the police. And the police basically took me to like a juvenile jail. There were like juvenile jails back then in Korea, and then I stayed there for a couple of weeks. And I wasn't really old enough because I was still about nine-ish. So I wasn't really old enough because back in 1980s, I'm 41 now. I was born in 78, and back in 1980s, they had like programs for basically teenagers, 12, 13-year-olds to go and work at factories and companies,
Wow.
and the companies become like a parent to the child. And I don't really have a problem with it because I mean a lot of things were really difficult back in
Yeah.
the early 80s to mid
Yeah.
80s. Korea was still coming out in terms of like a national power economically in the world, so it takes time.
Right. And it was
Yeah,
kind of a worldwide, I don't know, depression isn't the right word, but I guess recession. So it was kind of difficult
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you had the Korean War in the 50s, so like from the 50s to the 80s, it's only like 30 some years,
Yeah.
and Korea really had a struggle to kind of get back on the top of things. So I mean, yeah, so I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then I was transferred to an orphanage in a village near Seoul, and then I stayed there for about a year and a half, and then I was adopted
Wow.
to a beautiful, nice, loving family in a small rural town of Ripon, Wisconsin,
Wow. Was it
where
so
I grew up.
completely different? Like, were you like in shell
Oh
shock,
yeah,
culture shock? Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You're like 10 years old. I knew 5 words when I was 10, like the orphanage. I barely spoke Korean well.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't know how to read or write. I never went to school, and I was just like, oh, I have no idea what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
And I go to America, and I'm in this white family, and I didn't. It. I was, they gave me a picture dictionary. That's how we communicated for months
Wow.
through a picture dictionary.
Wow. I was just reflecting on that today because
Yeah.
what was I looking at that
So
I was
that's
like,
where
if
it
you
happened.
didn't know how to read anything, you would still understand this because of the picture. I can't remember what I was looking at today, but I remember when I was in China, they had like a lot of the street signs were pictographic because the same sort of reason. There's a lot of their population there that isn't
Oh,
technically
yeah,
literate because the language is so ridiculously hard to
right.
learn.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome that you
it's
had that
crazy.
that
I mean,
tool.
Korean is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Korean is very different. It's like it's an alphabet actually. They have consonants and vowels, so it's not
It's not as,
pictographic,
yeah,
like Chinese. Yeah,
very different. Yeah, so you
yeah,
were you were illiterate in both languages then, and so that's so fascinating. They were just really kind
yep.
people, and they just wanted to bring you over? Did they put you in school right away, or like how did things go?
So, like I came in June of 1989.
Okay.
So early June in 1989, and so I had good 3 months before school started. Our family took a quick vacation to Washington, Oregon, and Northern California,
Awesome.
and I came back and to Wisconsin, and we have a neighbor who was teaching me basically kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade
Wow.
English.
Wow.
I should have been, I should have gone into sixth grade like right away, but my parents decided to hold me back a year, so that I would get one more year of schooling,
Yeah.
and I think that was the right decision.
Yeah.
I was super shy. I was super shy when I was younger. I just was very timid about everything. I mean, you're in America with a bunch of white people. It's like, like Ripon, Wisconsin is rural America, Midwest America, where it's like less than 8,000 people, and it's like 99.99% like white people.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh my God.
Totally different. Wow. So that what a nice
Yeah.
neighbor to help you like catch up would by the time so the grade that you were held back into, were you sort of on par with people in that grade as far as your language skills went after that summer? Or I was going to say that'd be amazing. Like,
No.
wow.
Not a genius. I know that. I know I'm not a genius. And everything takes a long time. Quite stubborn.
Yeah.
So it takes like double long to learn anything. So
That's awesome.
no, the neighbor was paid.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, my father's a professor, and there's a college in Ripon, small little private college there. So he taught economics there. So, and my mother was a homemaker. But the thing is, they're quite, there's a big gap between our age. They're like 45 years older than me. They're in their mid
Wow.
80s now.
Wow.
I'm like 41, and so it's a big difference
Yeah.
in our age. So you can say that I was almost raised by grandparents, actually,
Yeah.
you know, even though they're my parents, right?
Yeah.
And my mother really felt, so they have three kids of their own, my parents. They
Okay.
have three kids who are biologically theirs, and then they adopted two more girls from Korea.
Wow.
And I tell you, like, my mother wanted one more child. For, she's a homemaker, and she's like a quintessential mother, you can
Yeah.
say. Like, she is a hardcore mother,
Yeah.
and she really wanted another child. And the story, I asked her when I was younger, I was like, why did you adopt me? And it's not an easy question to ask, and it's not an easy question to answer, because actually things are a little bit randomized in the way in which you don't get to just, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not like a catalog where you can just go and pick up a child
Yeah.
and, based on their whatever,
Right.
And she said that she wanted to adopt a child from India, and they were corresponding with each other, a girl who was an orphan,
Wow.
and they were corresponding with each other for 2 years.
Wow.
And just before she adopted this child, the Indian government denied adoption because they said that she was too old to adopt the child. And my mother said that she has never been more furious in her life. She
Oh,
was quite sad
that's
and
really
very
sad.
hurt by that experience. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And so that's why she decided to go back to the agency where she adopted, two girls from Korea. And my sisters were Korean. They were adopted when they were very young, like 3 years old and 5 years old. So
Wow.
they don't remember Korea hardly at all.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
but I was 10, and there is a statute of limitation of how old parents can be, and I fit the limit. Like, they were 80, they were 55, so they cannot go below 10 years old. They
Wow.
can adopt older than 10,
Yeah.
so that's why they adopted a 10-year-old, because I was the very limit. I just fit that age group,
Wow.
that was perfect for them. So that's part of the reason why I was adopted. Yeah,
Such random
but
chance.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it changes lives, obviously,
Right.
so.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if people really understand the adoption process, and I probably don't much myself either. But I did know that you kind of apply and you kind of wait and see, and it's like you said, it's not like you get to like look through and pick like, oh, this kid, and then you just will get that kid, and it's just kind of random. But that's even more randomized given all the limits and whatnot that were put on your
Well,
case.
yeah, it's a big process, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and so many different angles in which people perceive what adoption is, whether it's good or not, and whether you should, just focus on domestic adoption. There's so many questions regarding that, because I had to go and dig into all this kind of stuff myself. So
Yeah,
Uh,
where do you? I don't know any of those. I didn't know there was a debate about that. I mean, it makes sense why there would be, but I've just never thought about it or talked to anybody who would be involved in it. So what are the thoughts on that and where do you stand on it?
oh wow, yeah, yeah. So like going back to Korea because I spent my time in America, went to middle school, high school, and university, and I want Korea was always in my mind.
Yeah.
It's not like you look at your parents and wonder whether you're adopted or not. You know you're adopted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a clear difference between the culture and the society which you were raised in,
Yeah.
and so you have all these memories of Korea. So I really wanted to go back and I wanted to tie up some loose ends because I had a lot of questions
Yeah.
myself, obviously,
Yeah, because you
But
spent
my
time.
sisters did,
Sorry, I was just saying you spent time
yeah,
with a lot of your
yeah,
relatives, so yeah, that makes sense.
right. Yeah, and I was 10 and your memories are like more or less intact at that
Yeah.
age. I mean, of your childhood. And I remember a lot of things even, up to 5. So, and little pictures here and there, but um, I wanted to go back and just, see what happened because you're curious. You want to know why you happen to be in that kind of circumstance and,
Right.
like what happened with everybody? Like what were the circumstances? Did they die in a car accident? Did something blow up? I mean, what happened? Like, so you have all these like questions in your mind. And so you go back to Korea, and then what's the first thing you do? You go to the orphanage agency in which you were adopted from. I mean, naturally, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And you go there, and it's a big brick building, which I remember because I remember spending time there. I had my first picture taken off the streets there.
Wow.
After they took me out of the juvenile jail, they put me there, and I spent a couple of weeks there. I remember all of that,
Yeah.
and they sat me down on a chair, and they took a picture of me, and they had a dossier. They had a file of me like that thick,
Wow.
and initially they were like, sorry, this is a private organization and we're not going to share this information with you. And I was like furious. It's like, what
Like that's
are you
my
talking about? This is
information.
like yeah, this is, and the thing is actually, they did give a file to my parents, and my father had it in his drawer, and I found it. I was kind of scrounging around and I was like looking for stuff. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm just curious little kid. And when I was like, 14, 15, I saw a file with my name on it. I took it out and I went through all of that. And I was bawling my eyes out because like it was information in an objective sense, like, oh, my Korean name is Sungmu. Sungmu likes to eat this and this and this. It was just a very like observational, you know, um,
Yeah. Like clinical
what would you,
almost.
thing
Yeah.
about like, yeah, very, very clinical. And that was the file in which the parents were given after they adopted me, just to let them know about my psychology, I guess. I'm
Wow.
not sure what kind of characteristics I had. And then, when you read that when you're older and you're able to read it and you're able to understand it, you just kind of like, oh my God, like this is real, you
Yeah.
know, because you're still kind of adjusting. You're just still adjusting to everything. Even in high school, you're just trying to fit in and trying to be quote unquote normal about everything. And you can have the language, you have the language skills, you have the ability to, but still there's some little bit missing, like cultural thing, like, some nuance that you not completely, you know,
Yeah.
on the same page about, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so yeah, so in Korea, and then I was mad, but I was lucky because one of the social workers at the orphanage, she felt, I don't know, I guess, she understands us because I'm not the only adoptee. There are 200 plus thousand Korean adoptees around the world.
Wow.
200 plus thousand, Korean adoptees
Wow.
in Europe, Australia, Canada, and America. And America has like 10% of the adoptees, but a lot of them, they go back, and there are 4 major adoption agencies. And basically, she, told me about she sat me down and went through the file with me. So I
Oh.
was really, because I didn't speak any Korean, I
Wow.
didn't speak any Korean. I forgotten everything, and I had to
Wow.
relearn everything. Now
Wow.
I can understand. I'm an intermediate level Korean, speaker now, but I'm not. I didn't know anything back then, and I
Wow.
was only like 25, 26 when I went back. So
Wow.
yeah. So when she told me about it, she told me that I come from like a political family, big names in Korea, and big money and big status and all this kind of stuff. So that just kind of opens more doors.
Yeah.
You
That's really interesting to think
right?
about because
Like
then you,
how would they?
yeah, you kind of imagine like, well, then you have like, if you have like well connected, well resourced people in your family, then what happened? Like how did you just kind of slip through the cracks and run away?
Yeah, yeah. So what happened basically? I'm gonna just kind of boil everything down. Um, Basically, my father. So in Asia, oldest male is a kind of a most important thing in a
Yeah,
family.
like firstborn
So you have the
son.
father, yeah, the first phone, yeah, yeah. So the first son. It's not the firstborn.
Oh,
Firstborn. My father has an older sister.
oh, right.
So
It's
right. So older sister is the firstborn, but my father is the oldest son.
right.
So oldest son is important, right?
Of course.
And so okay, you got to imagine my grandfather. I got to meet my aunt through the adoption agency. They connected me to my aunt, who was the youngest surviving sister of that father's family.
Wow.
Okay, youngest sister,
Yeah.
and she was the only one that's alive. Everybody else is dead.
Wow.
Okay, and I remember her. I stayed with her. I remember her. It was the same face, and she remembers me.
Wow.
And first time we met, she was just bawling her eyes out, and
Oh.
I was just like, she is just like kind of like being visited by the ghost of the past kind of
Yeah.
deal. Ghost of the Christmas past. You're just like you just forgot about it, thought everything's gonna. And the thing is, some of us do come back to Korea and they want to like know what happened. And a lot of these Koreans, they just think, okay, they're gone to America, they're gone to Australia, they're gone to Europe, and they have no interest in coming back to Korea because Korea is crap. And why would they want to come back? You know? And
Yeah.
when they do, it's like, oh, all these memories, of everything that just kind of flood out. So I
Yeah.
understand, but I repress my emotions. I am the kind of person. I'm like a poker player where
Yeah.
I just like stone face and I don't show my cards.
Yeah. Well, you
And
probably
it's just
learned
the way
that.
I always been.
Yeah, you probably learned that pretty early, and it was probably a pretty good skill to have under your belt.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I guess it's a survival mechanism, you could
Yeah.
say, and it just become a part of you. So, but I learned to kind of let go over the years and just be able to be more open. And that's part of the reason why I'm able to do these type of shows, because you have come to face your past and yourself and all this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it would just be like, oh, I don't want anybody to know anything about any, whatever. I don't want to know anybody. I don't want anybody to know me kind of deal, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful way to put it, and I think it's very true, and I think that's part of the, work of all of our lives if we are being honest and true and moving forward is that we're facing, whatever attachments and whatever emotions and whatever baggage and trauma from the past and actually dealing with it and releasing it so that we can be sort of present in the moment but also in a way that maybe serves others and ties things together and kind of helps things move forward for everyone. So I
Yeah.
think that's cool.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's a big process, and and actually get to the top. It's going to be a lifelong deal. And once you accept that, once you realize, hey, I'm not at the very top of everything.
Yes.
I haven't come to the pinnacle of my knowledge or pinnacle of my emotion or spiritual development or all this kind of stuff. You realize actually it's going to be a lifelong, to the very moment of death, maybe even, that you're going to be learning.
Yes.
You're going to be, even that process is going to be a learning process. So
Yes.
like just accepting that, for me, it humbles you, but also allows you to know where you are,
Yeah.
and then and see that everybody is along the way. And then if you have certain experiences or understandings that you can share, and it can be, helpful with other people. And I think this is what this show is kind of what it's about,
Yes,
helping people to understand the development of things. Then
absolutely.
let's do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's awesome. And I know that, people get to points wherever they're at and they kind of think like I've arrived. Like I'm good. Here's where it's at and I'm done. I did
Yeah,
it. And
I'm woke.
yeah, I'm woke now. I did it. And it's
I'm
like,
woke.
I think that's one of the most dangerous pitfalls is to like believe that you are sort of done, or even as far as like, as far as a life path goes, but even as little as like on any given topic. If you're like, yep, that's the end of that one, like I understand it perfectly, it's like, oh, you understand it as much as you do now, and there could be tons more that you just don't know yet. And I think anytime you sort of stop
Yeah.
and feel stagnant, like that's probably not the best place to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of expansion and compression, expansion, compression
Right.
type of emotion that happens with people, where and ego is a lot like that, where you kind of like feel like really good about yourself, and then you have certain experiences that like makes you shrink, like, oh, I'm not as cool as I thought I was, and then you do something and you start to feel more confident about yourself, and then it's always this kind of dynamic,
Yes.
where things are kind of little bit moving around. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
it's good to be humble. I mean, but I think humbleness is a good quality, but if you are overly humble, I think that could be a little bit too much. That's like big ego upside down kind of deal,
Yeah.
also. So you got to always, that's why awareness is important to maintain that balance. We have egos. Don't pretend like you don't have one.
Yeah.
Like that's my first thing. Like, let's poke at it. Let's see what you got,
Yes.
and we heard of this word like shit testing. Everybody should test. And part of it is actually a wise thing to do, just to let people know, hey, this is who you are, this is where you are, like don't pretend to be more or less than what you are,
That's a
you
really
know
good point. And I also like what you're saying, it's like you want to be humble and you want to recognize that you're not like done yet, you're not the shit yet, and you still are always going to have more to learn, but you also don't want to be so humble that you have no confidence, and especially to the point where you're not making boundaries, because that shit
Yeah.
testing can also be a like, how can I take advantage of you and how can I use you to my advantage,
Yeah.
And you're like, you have to have
Oh
the
yeah,
firm
absolutely.
boundaries. And I think that's something that some people who really kind of get into the sort of like love and light or like spiritual path, allegedly, I think they sort of get
Mhm.
deluded into thinking they shouldn't have boundaries or can't make them, or that it's somehow like not spiritually appropriate. And I'm like, oh no, like you can be a warrior and be like super spiritually advanced,
Yeah.
right? It's not like you
Oh
shouldn't,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. And this notion, I don't know where it comes from. I think there's a lot of how would I say, confusion within the New Age, you can say, New Age movement, and part of that is like, oh, I am love, I am God, I am, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna whack you in the head
Yeah.
with a stick, and let's see if you're God or not.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like, and then they talk about like unconditional love and all this stuff. I only know of one unconditional love, and that's God to me. But as far as my relationship to God, I'm always struggling. I
Yeah.
want to know God. I want to, but I cannot say that I have unconditional love at all.
True.
I'm
Yeah.
trying. I'm trying to expand my, circle, but I'm gonna only do it on my terms. By the way,
Yeah. Right. Well, that's like the really interesting thing. It's like you are God, right? In the sense that you have a piece, like
Yeah.
spark or whatever in you, but that doesn't mean that it's, where it's clearly layered over in many, many layers of ego or whatever, like
Yeah.
identity or attachment or, whatever that is. And that's not God, right? Like, so
Right.
it is an
You just have
interesting,
one side of the coin.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we
Yeah.
were, I mean, I don't even think we'd be having this conversation, like, right? I mean, what would
No.
we'd be doing something else, I'm sure of it.
Well, when I was in high school, I had a near-death experience when I was in high school.
Wow.
It was induced by heavy drinking. I wasn't a big drinker. I was not really into drugs or smoking or anything. I was a good student, I mean, relatively. And then I was like I was a good child. And but I wanted to explore something, and then we bought some alcohol and took took it to my friend's farm far away, and we drank, and I didn't understand my limit at all.
Yeah.
I just kept drinking as much as I could handle. And then somebody else, we were smoking weed afterwards,
Oh
and it
God.
was like really put me,
Yeah.
at that very drunk state. And then you drink some, or you smoke some really like, hardcore stuff,
That's bad.
and and I was like dragging myself around. I was literally just tumbling over and just kind of crawling around. And then at some point where I just started, I passed out, and I passed out on the floor. I remember next to the couch, and my friends were there, and they were shaking me. And there's nobody around. We're in a farm. We're away from everybody. The parents are away, so that's why we decided to have a party there. And they were scared for me. And I remember them shaking me and slapping me and doing everything to wake me up.
Wow.
And really, the strangest thing for me was that I was completely like drunk just prior to that moment. Just like, you're like drunk.
Yeah.
But at some moment, I felt myself like my awareness separated myself, where I could almost see a portion of my body, and I wanted to express to them, I'm okay, everything's clear, no problem,
Yeah.
everything. But I couldn't move my body.
Yeah.
I had no function of my body at all, where I was like a drown victim, where I had no I don't know, no strength at all. And then some moments after, I was transported from there to another place, where I was like basically bathing in white light kind of deal.
Wow.
And it's very difficult to explain to people unless you have had this experience.
Yeah.
And then even the near death experiences are all slightly different, because I've heard so many of them. But
Very
basically for
different.
me, I was just bathing in white light. I couldn't distinguish myself from the outside self. I just knew that I existed. I just knew that there was no time and no space, because you don't feel it,
Yeah.
and everything collapsed. Everything collapsed. And then, but it's also probably the highest state of bliss that I have ever experienced in my life. You cannot experience like, happiness or pleasure, but bliss is a better word.
Yes.
Bliss at that level is the highest that I have ever experienced. And I've done a lot. I tell you, I've done a lot of stuff in my life. So I know.
Yeah.
I know what the human body is capable of.
Right.
And I came out, and I didn't know it was a near-death experience until years later, until I was in my parapsychology class, and I was reading through the near-death experiences. And I was like, oh yeah, I had similar experience. I know
Happened to
what
me.
they're talking about, because I had this experience,
Totally.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how you know that it's like real or something, right? Like before you ever even heard of it, you had the experience, and then it's valid. Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So that was when you were how old?
Yeah. Like 14, 15 years old.
So would you say that was sort of the thing that sort of like disillusioned you to the world, where you were like, hold up. Oh no, because you didn't even really realize what it was at first, maybe. Like you said.
Yeah, but you still have the experience. You didn't.
True.
You cannot. There was no words for it.
Yeah.
You cannot identify it, and there's no way for you to even communicate it with anybody. Like, how do you communicate that? For me, at that age, I remember coming home, and I was still like at home, like looking around, like like all day. I was like really confused. I was like really introspective about that experience. It was like really with me for a long time. And I couldn't explain it to my parents. I didn't want to tell them that I went and drank, and then I had that
drank to death. Yeah.
Woke up and everybody was gone, and one friend drove me back home. And everybody probably was scared that I actually died. And nobody wanted to take responsibility for that. I understand that. But for me, it kind of brought me into that road where I was curious about experiences. Because I wasn't really drinking or smoking or anything like that. But then I started to get into marijuana, and I started to get into mushrooms and LSD and all this kind of stuff, because I wanted to know. I had to know. And no matter how much I drank, or no matter what I did, I never got to that experience again.
Yeah, because it's not
fine.
It's not a physical high that you're having. It's a soul spiritual experience that you're having, and who knows what dimension.
Yeah. I can't. Still to this day, you cannot really like say what caused it. I cannot say like this like I say, alcohol was involved and marijuana was involved. And at that time, I thought some wiring in my brain had gone off. And that's the reason. I was always trying to come up with some reason as to why I had that particular experience. But I find it now, like where my stance on it now is that it was kind of a grace of God, you can say, that I was privy to have that experience because it allowed me to actually experience what infinity was. Like you can have a concept of infinity, you can have a concept of timeless and dimensionlessness, but unless you have the experience of it, it's just it falls on deaf ears. It's like be trying to explain what you can contemplate what colors are, when you're blind. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
You cannot speculate about what colors are when you're blind. It's just how do you do it, right?
Right. Yeah, that little slice of consciousness, it's impossible to transfer except through experience, and that's what true gnosis is. Now because you experienced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of people kind of take that word and they feel that there's a lot of connotation with New Age and
Right.
gnosis and all this kind of stuff, but I think it's just ignorance.
Yes.
Just look into it.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
look into it.
And it is, I think, the truest form of knowing something is experiencing it, and the rest is all kind of like mind games and conjecture, which is not bad. It's good to play mind games and conjecture and sort of travel through as best you can through the mental world. But it's like the best thing you could hope for is to experience something. And that's not to say that I think, I don't know that you can try to have an experience like that. And if you did, I don't know that it'd be safe or good. But I think but you can experience it.
I don't really feel like it's something. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can plan it out and say, hey, I'm going to make a formula, and if we do this and this and this, and then you're going to have this near-death experience, and then you're going to be able to experience, there's certain amount. Even, I've done like DMT before, and I
was just going to ask about that.
Even that, it's a very big range of experiences one could have as well. So it's
yeah. And how do you feel? Because I always wonder, like, I went to Ecuador once actually, and I was like, I'm gonna go into the Amazon, I'm gonna travel down this river to get to Iquitos, and I'm gonna like probably find some DMT somewhere along the way, like with a shaman, and like do that if that happens, and if not, it doesn't. But if it like calls to me and it happens like synchronistically, let's say, then I'll do it. And instead, completely different things happened, which were also rad. But I wonder, like, if you force it, is that fucked up? Like, is this like the whole, I don't know how I feel anymore. I used to dabble in a lot of various different types of drugs for a lot of various different types of reasons. And I just don't know that that even DMT is, even as much as it's been sort of like the spirit molecule and sort of like heightened in the spiritual community, if it's like a good idea or not. What do you think, having done it?
Yeah. Well, I read the book, by the way, The Spirit Molecule, and it's okay. It's a good book, but it still leaves you that with this question, like, what is that experience? It can it can explain. It can tell you about certain experiences, and these people have these experiences, and they're varying degrees. Some people have like clowns and all this kind of weird stuff that's coming to them, and they can write it out, in a book, and you can read about it and be like, wow, this is what happens, So, like, it's all about, to me, about your intention.
Yeah.
Like, when are you really ready for it? Is it, I'm not saying that that's what anyone needs.
Right.
Maybe you don't need anything at all.
Yeah.
There are people who have achieved quite a bit, like, through meditation or prayer, without any drugs. And I'm not endorsing drugs in any way. I just can say that I have had a personal experience with this, and I can only say that everything has come to me. I never went anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Like for it. I'm sorry. Like, I never went, I was just, I've been living in Nepal and India, and I got tired of everything. So I got rid of everything, and I decided to buy a motorcycle.
Woohoo!
I had my backpack that's sitting there, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to travel around on my motorcycle.
That's awesome.
And live off my tent for a while, so I just went and did it, and I went to this area called Muktinath, which is this is actually a holy place in Nepal. It's in the Himalayas, in the Annapurna region. It's a village. And this is an area, Mukti means liberation, actually. Mukti, So Muktinath is a town or a village of liberation.
Wow.
Okay. So this is the place where Vishnu God, there's three, they call it Trimurti. Trimurti is, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right?
Yes.
So each one is of the one aggregate or oneness of God, but they just represent different portions of the duties of that God. The creative aspect, the maintenance aspect, and the destroyer aspect. So just because you say something is Shiva, that doesn't mean it's evil.
Right.
It's a natural progression
Totally.
of it's just like winter,
Yeah.
spring, summer, and it's just natural progression. If you're gonna have time, you're gonna have space, you're gonna have creative maintaining. But anyway, so the Vishnu
Totally.
God came down, from the heavens there. So that's and
Wow.
then in the form of silagram. So the spiral. So and this is like 3,500 meters and above.
Wow.
This area. This is in the mountains.
High up.
And you have silagrams there.
What's that?
So you have this. You know what a silagram is?
No.
It's a rock. It's a fossil with a cone-shaped fossil. So in a rock, there is a Fibonacci like cone-shaped spiral that goes around, and it's like a shell.
How do you spell it?
Like a seashell.
Do you know how to spell
I'm not
silagram?
sure.
Ah.
I think it starts with a C.
Silagram.
Silagram. Yeah. But it's a cone shape. So it's a rock. It's fossilized, and it's got a spiral. So
Wow.
it's basically fossilized shell.
Cool.
So what does it mean? It means that a sea level was
Up there. Wow.
above 3,500 meters at one point.
That's crazy.
Where you have sea creatures that turn into fossils into these rocks, and that is a holy item. You're not supposed to sell it nor buy it, but people do anyway because it's like a souvenir item, and there's abundance of that.
Wow.
Anyway, I go there,
insane.
and a friend of mine, she is from Kazakhstan, and she and I split, and she went and worked there with a Ukrainian guy, and they have like a guest house there. They make the best food in that area because there are a lot of people who are trekking and traveling there for holy purposes. They have temples and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
She introduced me to another friend who is like a Russian shaman.
Wow.
He's a Russian shaman. He made his own DMT, crystal DMT.
Wow.
And he went to Iowa. He went to South America. He comes kind of from a KGB family, actually.
Yeah.
Very smart guy, smart Jewish guy, and and the Russians, and actually all my friends in Nepal and India seem to be Russians and Ukrainians. I don't know why. It just happened that way.
Yeah.
I'm like a token Korean American guy amongst all these Russians, So
That's amazing.
the Russians. I love the Russians because I love their energy. I love their attitude because they're like very stern,
stoic,
tough, and like stoic, and the scariest white people in the world, really.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, but so we were talking, we were smoking cigarettes. I'm on my motorcycle. I wanted to hang out there for a couple of weeks, and we were talking, and I was telling him, I would love to have an ayahuasca experience someday, and I was telling him about that. And he was kind of testing me, like, "Whoa, like, have you ever, tried LSD, magic mushrooms, and all this stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, many times, like 30, 40 times at least that I remember." And he's like,
That I remember.
And then so he was kind of, yeah. But like, around then, enough times, But he was kind of, poking at me and seeing whether or not I would be qualified because it's a pretty,
intense.
It's a pretty strong experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's about as intense as you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, we're gonna do a ceremony like a few days later, and then we're gonna prepare you for that. So like
Wow.
they were transitioning to another guest house. We had this yoga room all to ourselves, and we're gonna do it at midnight. So midnight comes around. It was just him and myself, and he set out a table. He put a carpet down, and he said, and he gave me some powder, and I had complete trust. I was like, we already got to know each other, so I was like, okay, screw it. I want it. Let's do this. Let's go for it. I don't want to have any doubt in my mind. I'm the
Yeah.
kind of person I just jump in.
Me too.
I don't just put I don't put my toe down there. I just jump in there. So he gave me this powder. He said this is ayahuasca powder. So he has condensed basically the ayahuasca into a powdered form. So I ingested like this kind of the essence of ayahuasca.
Oh, you
could
didn't
say,
smoke it. You
in my
ate it.
mouth.
Wow.
No, that's one part of it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
one part of it. So that's there's the eating part of it, like and then we smoked crystal DMT. I did.
Yeah.
He did not.
Yeah.
So he had a pipe where I had a straw, and then I basically inhale as deeply as I could, and then I exhaled, and I didn't really remember seeing much smoke coming out. So I thought, well, maybe there's nothing. I don't know. This is my first time smoking DMT, so I
Yeah.
had no idea what to expect, right? And then I had this kind of like spiral descending on me, like Christmas tree type of spiral with like lights and stuff. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm getting a little bit of a visual. And he gently, gently, gently laid me down on the carpet, and I could feel myself hitting the floor, like like you can still. But after that, it's like I fell through the floor kind of deal. It's like you have the spiral descending upon you to the point where actually you enter into it.
Yeah.
And once you enter into it, actually, you lose all sense of yourself. And you lose all sense of yourself completely. Not even a little, there was no string attached to this body
Wow.
anymore. And when I was falling through this kaleidoscope, which was like fractal in nature and Mendelbrot-ish, where
Yeah.
it was forever, I felt as if I was tumbling in air, just like, just like tumbling in air. And as the fractals were moving, as it was being like kaleidoscopic, I felt like it was crushing all aspect of myself. Like
Wow.
whatever I identified as myself, it just crushed me to like a pulp.
Wow.
To the point where actually it spat me out onto a floor, and I found myself in a giant cave, and everything was like luminescent. It's not like where in this world where the light hits a surface and you see the reflection of the light.
Yeah.
Every surface was like luminescent, like
Yeah.
it was producing light in itself, glowing. And from there, I was a puddle on the ground and nothing more. And I was just like,
You're
like,
liquid.
like this. And then a voice came. Yeah, I was completely in a liquid state, and a voice came to me that you have to form yourself. So I used like this like all emotional energy I could to like make myself into a form and dig myself and pull myself out of this liquid state.
Wow.
And during this time, I was told later on that I had actually physically stood up from the carpet and looked up in the sky and did this and just screamed
Wow.
as loud as I could. And he was like, oh my God, you were so intense. I didn't even want to. And like, it shook the whole village.
Wow.
Actually, like somebody is being stabbed and
Yeah.
being murdered alive,
Like, what the
at
hell?
midnight. Yeah.
That's
yeah,
how
it
much
was pretty
force
bad,
you had
know?
mustered and like transferred through yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I wasn't aware of it because I was still in this other
You're in
dimension
the other,
where
yeah.
I'm like forming myself. Yeah, and I'm like, like this, and then it's like your head is coming out, and your arm and shoulders, like you're literally pulling yourself out of the mud.
You're like birthing yourself.
And yeah, basically it was like a birthing process. But the thing is, what's really interesting for me, because I was practicing meditation quite a bit prior to this, so I remember every little detail, and I still remember every little detail of
Mhm.
that. I was completely conscious, I was
Yeah.
completely aware. So in this world, in this dimension, another entity who was like he was bright light. He was yellowish in color. He was yellowish, and he was luminous in himself. And you could not distinguish any facial features or anything. You can just see the silhouette of this light of
Wow.
a human form. But I got this sense that he was like a monk, Vedic monk type. That was the feeling.
Yeah.
And he was saying to me like Vistari, Vistari, Vistari. And there were some other words that it was spoken to me, but I don't remember them because it was like so fast. And it's like in a different vibration, you can say. Excuse
Yeah.
me. And so,
Did you know what that meant?
so,
Does that mean
so
something?
he helped me to. I'll tell you
Okay.
in a
Okay.
bit
All right.
after I finish this story. You know, so he pulls me out. He pulls me out, and then I'm looking around, and I'm like, wow, I'm in a giant cave, and there's like kind of a ziggurat type of thing right in the middle, and it's like a small pyramid, in a ziggurat type, where
Yeah.
what is, it's not like a pyramid, it's like a
The
just a
step
pyramid,
pyramids.
but
Yeah.
it's like with steps.
Right.
Yeah, the step pyramids, right? So on top of it, there is a chair that was very reminiscent of like East Asian chairs that kings and high level people would sit. It's like a squarish. It's not like the thrones like English people sit on, where it's
Right.
like tall, back. It's like a very square, and you just kind of sit on it in a lotus type of position.
Okay.
This type of chair. And then the entity was telling me like, this chair is for you. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is it? Like, I was actually quite humbled by it, because actually it was like a very, how would I say, like, it was a kind of a serious position, you can say.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't do well with
Hey, this
responsibility.
is
Let's just say
not where
I
I'm
don't like
at. Yeah.
commitment. Yeah. And I just crumbled. And then he like held me up, and he's like, it's okay. You're not ready for it now. But, that is there. And once I was starting to crumble, I felt like weak, and I felt like I didn't deserve. You have this kind of like natural sense of like, how would I say, like, just I don't want it kind of deal.
Yeah.
I don't want that responsibility. And then actually things start to shift out. He was kicking me out of there,
It's like,
this
move on.
entity.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like I was coming. I had this world, and then the world that I was in, and I saw the face of actually another friend, another Russian friend. Is like Reiki healer. When I screamed, he woke up, came out of bed, and he was checking out what was going on.
Yeah.
So I saw his face, and so this entity's face and his face was like shifting in and out.
Weird.
So it was like, zoom, 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 so I was, and then I was completely out of this dimension, and I was in this dimension, and then I realized that this whole other dimension was like where I was,
Wow.
and actually he was sitting in front of me where this guy is not supposed to. I knew something was wrong, so I even apologized to the guy, and then he's like, so they laid me down again, and then I had another like 20-30 minutes of like really wild ride, like being shifting around, shaking, like this, all this kind of stuff. So it was pretty intense. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was my first DMT experience.
That was the first one. So you went back for more.
Yeah. Not there. I hung out there for a little bit, and I had to move on, and I wanted to travel.
Yeah.
I already spent enough time. It was getting kind of stagnant. I was still with this experience. He gave me some LSD a few days later, just to kind of bring me down from that level, because you experience such intensity that you kind of need another thing to kind of get you back into reality. And that in itself was another big deep experience as well. I was in a cave. I wanted to be away from everybody, and you're in this arid region of Nepal in the Himalayas. I find a cave, I crawled into it, and I just kind of waited until this process was actually happening. And it was like, you kind of experience this kind of time dilation type of thing. And I had this like deep sense, and this like word, this study was
Yeah.
still coming back. It was still echoing in my mind. And I kind of laid down in the like a you know I kneeled, and like huddled down, and I was praying, and I felt this light coming through the cave, like above here, and it like was in front of me, and I was so afraid to look. I was so like, because it was such brightness that even with my eyes closed, I could see it in my head
Wow.
that this light was there, and then it was like in front of me, and then I was just like in this like prayer mode, and I didn't want to have any, how would I say, like expression of ego at all to it,
Yeah.
because it's like so intense and powerful that I just kept my eyes shut, and I just prayed, and it just felt like it touched me a little bit, and then it left. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on. So later on, I was traveling. I went to Sikkim. I spent a lot of time there. I mean, that's another long story. I spent like two months in Sikkim, which is like right in between Nepal and not Burma. What is that? The Bhutan,
Oh, wow.
and then it's like in that corner of India. It's like Sikkim is like situated right in between Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. It's like right in
Wow.
that corner, and I spent 2 months there, and then I went and came to this area, which is Himachal Pradesh. And the guy, this another Ukrainian friend of mine, he was a monk for 10 years in Vedic line.
Wow.
In Vedic line, he was a monk, so he knew Sanskrit quite well.
Wow.
Right? He knew Sanskrit. He's a very intelligent guy. He's got wife and kids, so that's his path now. But I was telling him about this experience, and he went in and he brought out these Sanskrit dictionaries, and I know a little bit of Devanagari. I know how to read Devanagari a little bit. My
Wow.
Sanskrit is very, very, very basic level. So anyway, he was showing me what that word meant, and Vistadi means to expand. Vistadi, it starts with a V, Vistri.
Or I.
Vistri. Yeah.
Wow.
Vistadi. Yeah. Vistadi. So Vistadi in Sanskrit means to expand, to share, to give. There's like 20 definitions. All these Sanskrit words, they have so many definitions,
Yeah.
and they're very different. It depends on use and depend on, suffix and prefix and all that kind of stuff. So,
I like that
yeah.
conceptual sort
So
of clustering of ideas, though. It works for me. It makes more sense than really like narrow definitions and.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it's all about context, right?
Yeah.
It's all about use.
That's awesome. So this word, you had never learned it before. It was said to you in this, I don't even want to say vision because you were literally there, but whatever you want to call that experience. And then, this guy's showing you what it actually means afterwards. So what do you feel like was the purpose of that word and that experience?
Well, I've been living in a very like shelter condition for a while, like where I was living in Korea. I left Korea. So just to, I got done with Korea. I mean, I was looking for my biological mother, and I was, you have to work. I was teaching English. I was a carpenter for a while. I did this and that, just to get different experiences. And then I decided to get rid of everything again. I was like, okay, I'm done with here. I've done everything I could. And I knew about my history. I came here to do what I needed to do. Time to move on kind of deal. I didn't have a girlfriend. I did have a serious girlfriend, but we broke up, blah, blah, blah. It's a part of life, and you just got to move on. So nothing was holding me there. I didn't have a family. I didn't have anything. I got to know all information I wanted to know. So I was traveling in Japan, and I met a Dutch girl randomly in Kyoto at it was kind of romantic situation and stuff. So she was studying Chinese out of scholarship. And we were 12 years apart, but she was studying Chinese, and she was traveling around, and she asked me if I was interested in traveling in China with her. And I was like, yeah, sure. Beautiful Dutch girl,
Yeah.
and, I'm just
Sure.
a dude, and I'm just trying. I have no plans, so let's go to China. So we traveled in China for 2 months together.
That's
And
awesome.
backpacking and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I was in Mongolia and she was in Indonesia. We flew. So we were in Japan, and then she already had plans to go to Indonesia, and then I already made plans to go to Mongolia, and then we made plans to meet in China. We did, and then from there we decided to go on our epic trip. And then so we were basically going on the western side of China near the Tibetan border. So Tibet is a big country.
Yeah.
It used to be a big country. But when Chinese took over, they basically cut it in half and gave like that half part and say this is an autonomous region of Tibet, which is like Lhasa and that area. But actually the eastern Tibet and western China, that region is still part of Tibet. But
Yeah.
now they just added that into like different states like Yunnan and Sichuan, other areas. So you can literally go to Tibet with a Chinese visa. But if you go to Tibet, you cannot stay there at all because it's autonomous region and the Chinese government do not want you to go there, right?
Yeah.
So we were traveling in Tibet through buses and microbuses. It was a crazy amount of how would I say like hardcore traveling. So we were traveling around there for 2 months. She had to go back to school. She got another year free scholarship to learn Chinese. Her level of Chinese was quite good. I mean, she's a very good linguist, so she wanted to go back to Beijing and learn Chinese to become a professional interpreter slash translator. I did not want to go to Beijing. I've been to Beijing several times, and Beijing is not a awesome place for me.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I think these big cities in Asia in general, they're quite dirty and quite busy, and just I've already lived in Seoul for 10 years, and you got like 20 million people packed in. 20 million people packed in, and that's not even the biggest. Beijing's 30 million, Shanghai is like 30 million, at Tokyo 30 million, and you got like Mumbai and Delhi. There's 30 million also. I've been to all those places. I'm not a big fan of big cities.
Me either.
And I was like, okay, you go your way, I go my way. So I went through Tibet, and I had I bought a tour package through Tibet, and then they exited me out of Nepal. So that's kind of how I got to Nepal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing journey. Yeah, I'm with you on the big cities being not the best place. They're cool to visit. Like, it's cool to go to Beijing. It's cool to go to Shanghai and to like experience that and see what it's all about. And then it's like really cool to leave again, go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a giant prison to me. That's kind of how I see them. It's like a big, I don't know. It's just concrete jungle.
Yeah. So that experience with the light and the word Vistari. I mean, do you feel like this is something that you're still sort of unraveling, or is this something that you're kind of like, oh, I totally get that lesson, or that experience, and it makes total sense to me, or how is that all working out?
Well, I guess the way I interpreted this experience and what that meant for me is because I didn't really answer that question when you initially asked me, but for me, it's about expanding and sharing myself and sharing my experiences and sharing my life, because I was very private. I am, you can say I am a INTP in personality chart, even though I may not seem.
Yes, I understand.
Even though I may not seem like an INTP. Because everybody's like, no, you're such an extrovert. You only know this much about me.
Yeah.
That's why you think I'm an extrovert. But in reality, I am quite introverted, and too much so. So we need to find some balance. We need to find, if you're too much of an introvert, you need to. The brave thing to do is to share.
Yeah.
The brave thing to do is to give more of yourself. And mingle with other like-minded people. That would be the right thing to do. But if you're too much of an extrovert, maybe you need to go and meditate and become introverted and find that balance. And that's kind of this whole process to me, is to go on shows, or I'm grateful that people feel like, oh, he seems interesting enough to interview, like yourself, and I've been on other people's shows as well, and it's been wonderful experience to me. So many like-minded people who are really on the path of the truth, because that's all we want.
Right.
We don't want anything else. We want nothing. Like, we don't want a veneer of truth. We want the hardcore stuff,
Yeah.
right? And to do it, you need to actually go and talk and actually start to think about stuff and maybe go on a journey. We're all on a journey of ourselves, to ourselves, for ourselves.
Absolutely. Well said. I think it's totally true, and it's a good reminder to remember too that literally everybody is on the path, you know? It can be like a thing where you sort of like feel like we were talking about earlier, like kind of egotistical about it. And you're like, oh, I'm on the path, and like this person's not on the path. And it's like, no, you really don't get to decide. And in the end, like literally every single being of every kingdom, you know, like mineral, animal, human, angel, whatever, they're all on the path and they're all headed somewhere. And you're not alone there, you know, but like you're saying, it is also really important to know sort of your value or your worth or whatever, and then share that in ways that are serving other people, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and yourself as well. I mean, like, let's be honest, we're not entirely altruistic, as we may imagine or like to be. I mean, that's you're not going to get to that point of unconditional love. You're not going to get to that point of unconditional love just by, just by saying that I am unconditional love, all this kind of stuff. You have to actually go through it and be it, and everything should align. Your thoughts, your behavior, your words, they should all align. They're different like lenses, in a Venn diagram, and they should all come to a point where they're completely aligned.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do, because like nowadays, especially in the internet world, it's very easy for people to get very flippant about stuff.
It is.
It's
too
very
easy.
easy for people to just, where they're just kind of like, how would I say, they're on a keyboard and they just say whatever they want and just,
don't think about it.
Like children. Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of maybe because of our sort of internet etiquette, but I feel like it's sort of bleeding over into the real world more and more, where I think people are, having that same sort of flippant attitude where nothing really matters, or they don't really care about other people in real life as well. And but it is interesting, like what you're talking about. And I've had people sort of like say to me almost as like a diss, they're like, oh yeah, like you're so spiritual, that's why you're like doing blank. And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't really try to like present myself necessarily as like this holy spiritual person. If it comes off that I'm spiritual, that's cool, because I mean I have that aspect of myself, but I'm not like attached to this as a personality or like as an identity. But also, like, if I have flaws, I was never trying to hide any of them. Like, I'm sorry that you thought that I didn't have any or something. Whatever's happening, I don't really know. But yeah, I have flaws for sure.
yeah, and that's a good thing to admit. And the thing is, we're all a hypocrite to a degree. Let's just be clear about that. Everybody is a hypocrite to a degree. But the thing is, it's a line. There's let's say two types of hypocrisy. You have one type of hypocrisy where you're a spiritual leader. You pretend to be spiritual, but underneath it all, you have a lot of dirty stuff going on. You're doing all kinds of drugs. You're engaged in all kinds of indulgences, whatever. You got underneath, but you have this veneer of spirituality. Now, what's the opposite of that? You have this veneer of, hey, I'm just a regular Joe. I'm just doing, whatever. I go to work, I do my thing, but you go hide in the closet and pray.
Yeah.
You don't tell everybody about it. You don't, you maintain a moral discipline.
Yeah.
You're a hypocrite too.
That's an excellent point.
But which one is better? Which one is better?
Is one better? Or are they both kind of like, no, you need to be more honest, right?
No. One is definitely better than the other in my book.
Yeah.
In my book, because the thing is, here's the problem. The free will comes with a lot of responsibility, and a lot of that responsibility comes from the fact that there is so much to do in this world. There's so many directions in which that you can go. Really, I mean, like, you can do this, you can do that, you can imagine anything that you want, and that's the ideal of freedom. But just because you're free to do something, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should do something.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we should not do, even though we have the ability to do.
Yes.
Right? So you have the ability to be free, but that doesn't mean you should do those things. Just because I can go buy a gun and shoot somebody, because, that's in the range of my ability. I have a sword. I practice martial arts. Just because I have the ability to kill somebody with a sword, should I just go and kill somebody with a sword?
Yeah.
Or are there only prescribed reasons why I should defend myself? So
Right.
I have no issues of stealing because I stole before, but I stole because of I needed to survive.
Yeah.
I stole because I was hungry and didn't have food for days and weeks. So stealing, was able to justify, right? And
Right.
anybody in my circumstance would do the same.
Right.
But do you steal out of greed? Do
Yeah.
you steal out of, do you lie because you want to protect someone? Like we tell a lot of white lies, whatever, you're not fat. I mean, that's the typical
Yeah.
one, right?
You look great.
Right?
Yeah. You're
So,
doing a good
yeah,
job.
you look great. Yeah, everything, and so like, do you lie for good purpose, or do you lie because you want to like actually, hide yourself and say, hey, look, I want people to perceive me to be awesomer, more awesome than I am. I mean, like, what's the intention? Everything
Yeah.
boils down to intentions.
Yes. Well, it's a fascinating point, and this is what I always am trying to get to when I'm explaining that, like, I don't follow laws. I follow, my heart in any given moment, because if you have a preconceived structure and notion of what should happen when, then there's always going to be something that comes along and proves you wrong, and you needed to actually act in a different way
Right.
for it to be right, or however you want to describe that, to be good
That's
or to be
right.
productive, right? And so how would I know ahead of time? I just
Right.
know that I do what I think is best in any given moment. And that's like chaotic to some people. They're
That's
like, well,
right.
how do we know that people are going to do the right thing or the best thing? Right? It's like, you don't. And you just hope that like everyone's heading towards the best, that we can make, or whatever. And you try to share
Well,
your ideas of what's good and true and whatever with people. But I mean, in the end, you can't control anything but yourself. So you got to let that go. But, I like
yeah,
that point.
yeah, and I completely agree with you, because like laws are there, and they're there to guide you. They're there to help you, But the problem with it is that when you have so many laws, and so many laws that contradict each other,
Yeah.
right? Actually, and then part of laws is enforcing laws too. If you don't enforce laws, it's not really a law either,
True.
right? So it's like it's a very difficult situation, especially within America, with the court system, with everything that's going on now. What is right? What is like what is this ideal of law? The law is there. It's like traffic. People drive on the right side or left hand side. In America, you drive on the right side of the road. That's traffic. If you drive on the left hand side of the road, you're going to crash into somebody, and you're not only going to kill yourself, you're going to kill somebody else,
Yeah.
which is a double sin, basically. So it's just traffic. Traffic is kind of rules to help people along on the path from point A to point B, just to let you know, hey, these signs mean this, and then this is the way you should behave. See these signs, but you're sitting in a small town with traffic light, and everything is red, and you see no cars, or there's a stop sign. Even better, you have a stop sign, and I used to do this all the time. You're supposed to come to a complete stop and then go, but there's nothing going on,
Yeah.
so you just kind of slow down, and then you just move on. You broke the law.
Yeah. Like, big deal.
Yeah. So
Totally.
yeah.
And I think everyone can relate to it when you bring it down to that level too. Like, technically you're an anarchist, you break the law all the time. You only follow the law when you know you need to, or when someone else is watching, or when you know it's the right thing, and the rest of the time you're like acting, in anarchy, which is most people
Right.
most of the time.
Well, that leads us to the next question, right? Like, what is the prescribed right enforcement of all this? Because like, I spent a lot of time in China, and Chinese have this like social credit system.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of that, right? Where,
Yeah.
it's like they have all these surveillance cameras, and then everyone is on a screen, and their name is up, and they have stars on, next to their name, just like, like a Lyft. I'm going to give you a, good Lyft stars or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
review,
like,
yeah.
rating, right? Yeah, you get a rating. And then, so if you're a good citizen, you have 5 stars, you pay your taxes and you do everything. There's no record of you. But if you're a bad citizen, then you get 1 star. And when you get 1 star, basically you're shit out of luck. I'm sorry. You don't get to travel on regular transportation. You don't get to buy things or sell things or do anything. And then when you start to become homeless, well, they're going to put you in a gulag. You know what I mean? Like, so, it's like a very sticky situation. And do we really want that for
No.
ourselves?
No.
I don't
God,
think
no.
so.
I don't think so either. I don't think a
Yeah,
lot
but
of Americans really. I mean, I think people in this community, the people we're talking to and who are listening to us right now, they know. But I don't think a lot of like general Americans really understand what China is like. And especially lately, I've been hearing this a
right,
lot like, oh, why are you criticizing China? That's racist. And like, first of all, it's a country. It's not racist to criticize a country. But also, China
right.
deserves criticism. China is one of the most terrifying places I've ever
Every
been.
country does.
True. Yeah.
Every
Every country.
country, yeah, every country needs criticism, and we should hold everybody else accountable. If
Yes.
there's something going on over there, we gotta. I mean, there's nothing wrong to talk about it.
No.
Let's talk about Germany. Let's talk about Sweden. Let's talk about England or France. It doesn't matter.
Totally.
If you see something wrong, it's good to talk about it, and and come to a point where you understand what it is and try to see the bigger picture of it. But like, I don't have anything against individuals. Like China themselves, like the Chinese are great people. I've met so many wonderful people there, and great food and all this kind of stuff, But like, we're talking about a government system.
Yeah.
We're talking about a structure where everybody is living in.
Yeah.
So individuals have no say what this structure is. And they created a system, they created a structure that not one person in that system, not even the president, not even the group, the cabinet members, they cannot do anything to change it, because it's actually, I think, in my opinion, it's probably controlled by AI now. They created a monster, and now they're serving that monster, and then the monster has subjugated everybody. It's like almost like conjuring up the devil and being like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and then you realize, wait a minute, what did I just do? You have the demon in front of you, and he's like a really powerful entity, and you think you're going to control it?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's exactly, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's literally probably demonic, but at the very least, it's AI, and it doesn't give a crap about anything. And people are, people who are kind of AI apologists are like, well, they do whatever you program them to do. They have limitations based on their programming, but we've already seen AI that can create its own language that we can't decipher. So clearly it can do things outside of what we programmed it to do. And if it's on this scale already, like, did you ever read V for Vendetta, the graphic novel?
I didn't read it. I have seen the movie.
Okay, the movie is a little bit different.
I have downloaded it.
And it's an awesome movie, but in the book, there's actually an AI that's controlling everything. And I'm like, how prescient was this person to make this so long ago,
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
And it's a big topic, and like, it's just something, it's a kind of a natural progression, especially nowadays, like people are talking about transhumanism and singularity, and we got D-Wave computers and all kinds of stuff that's happening, and things are like, going at a pace that is like really mind-boggling, that we don't know how to like keep up with that. I mean, there's a lot of things that we should be worried about as individuals, because humans have this tendency to be like, hey, we can do it. We can make nuclear weapons. Let's make nuclear weapons, and then let's set it off, and let's do CERN. And what if there's a 50% chance that we create a black hole and everything goes? Well, let's flip the switch on.
Yeah.
50. Let's go with it.
It's so funny. We're so like self-destructive and unaware. And I like to think like in the grand yeah. And I like to think in the grand scheme of things, it's like it all balances out no matter what happens, and we kind of end up where we end up no matter what. Like, but I still feel like it matters, like what we do here and now and how we get there, and how we, like you were saying, like you're like screaming your force into like forming yourself in that space that you were in, like all your will is directed there. Like I feel like that's the type of energy we should be like bringing into forming our experience collectively here on this plane. Like we shouldn't just be like, whatever. I'll go like eat at Taco Bell or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's just the mechanism in which the controllers have created this world that we're living in with the economics. My father was an economics professor, so I had to learn a little bit about economics. I'm not a I don't have no alphabets behind my name. I'm
Yeah.
just Joe Nobody. But like from what I understand, you know, the construct in which that this the reality, this world. Because look, think about anybody. You're born into this world, right? And especially as an American, you are, given a social security card with your name on it, and that's not even you. That's somebody else. That is a representation of you.
Yeah.
And so yours traded in a stock market. I'm an American citizen myself, so I have the same thing. So I'm not, distancing myself from all that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that we are born into slavery. We are literally born into the matrix, you can say, and maybe it's not as like dramatic or as like, wild as like the movie where you're like Neo and then you got all but in a way, there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Because it's about human energy, like what you do, like all this money stuff, that where we put attention in. It's about energy. That's your spiritual energy. Where does
Yeah.
it come from? That comes from God. God has given you that freedom to use that energy in which way, but that energy has been obfuscated. That energy has been funneled through banks, literally like currency, current, and then that energy is flowing by the banks, in a direction. This ocean of, various, well, you can say value systems.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just wild. Like, the pyramid of everything. And once you start to go into it, it's a huge rabbit hole. But I think it's good for people to be aware what their prison looks like.
Yeah. It is a prison and it is the matrix. And it's like, no matter, I always go back to people are like, oh, we're living in a simulation. And I'm like, I mean, maybe, and it wouldn't really matter. But in the end, like it's a simulation no matter how you look at it, because either way, your brain is simulating, all the data that it's getting into an experience that you can sort of perceive. So like, so like, no matter how you look at it, it is a simulation, but that doesn't mean that it's a valueless vector that we're just sort of like floating through. Like we can still form it, interact with it, and, grow ourselves or our core, or however you want to think about that, traveling forward on the path and however you want to describe it. And so it still matters, because I think a lot of people, when they go into that sort of like simulation thinking, they're like, therefore nothing matters, so I'll just do whatever. And it's like, cool, I guess do that, but like I think it actually matters.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, like I think especially like our generation and younger, we grew up with like Nintendos and computer games and whatever system, and then you go into that world, and then you have this kind of unlimited lives kind of deal, and you just kind of do and explore, and things are happening. But like at the same time, you are living in this body still, and time, as far as I know, always goes from past, present to future. I haven't had any experience thus far where I went from future, present to past. I'm not going to go back to, I don't get to go back in time and change things, and I shouldn't have any expectation to, because I don't have any experience of doing that. If it happens, it happens, but I don't have any hope for it. I don't have any expectation for it. But the thing is, the problem with the simulation theory is that it is true that we do live in a holographic world. It is true that we live in a matrix, but so what, it.
Yeah.
So what, it. Like your knowledge isn't at a point where you turn into Neo and you can start flying in the air and manifest things randomly, and like you're not God on earth or like with a small G, by the way.
Yeah.
You're not at that point. You don't have that power. You're just saying that because you heard it from somebody.
Yes.
It has no meaning to you.
Exactly.
So, but then you don't operate as if you truly believe it's a simulation anyway.
True.
Because you still care about the bank account.
You still try not to cut yourself.
This and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still not trying to cut yourself. You still need to eat food and drink water and do all the materialistic things. Oh gosh, What simulation are you talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's well said. That's what. But I mean, it's fascinating to talk about, and I'm not telling people they shouldn't talk about it, explore it, or whatever. I just like that's exactly the mental space I'm in. I'm like, okay, cool. So what? Like, let's just we're gonna keep going either way, right? Okay, let's keep going. Well, we said that
in India. Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
No. Just in India, they talk about Maya. Maya is illusion.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything is Maya. Everything is this table is Maya. This phone is a Maya. Okay. It's the same idea. It's the same idea. So what, it's just a word. It doesn't really have any, how to say, like tangible tangible like meaning for
Yeah.
oneself, like just conceptually understanding. Everything has to actually be something where you experience it and make it real, and then everything becomes, then that's, I think, to the point of like higher and higher awareness, that you actually are completely aware and operate as if that you are in Maya, you know.
Don't you think if you got to that point where you're like fully actually present and fully aware in the moment, that you could literally manipulate everything just like the, maybe even more so than the movie The Matrix portrays?
I would say so, yeah. I
I
think
think so.
so. I think there has been examples of it, and I think there have been people who have come and spoken about it, not just one individual, but many others,
Yes.
and they have, actually, there are even, some personal experiences, you can say, that may come, that will give you a little taste of that, what that might be, you know,
Totally.
when one is ready for it.
Agreed. And I think that's one of the things too that people, I think, might miss in a lot of these types of ideas as they're pouring over them. Is there, I just think some people are like, well, I want some kind of experience like that, or like, why hasn't that happened to me, or like, how can I get it, and I'm gonna go find it, I'm gonna seek it. And it's like, and I'm not saying you shouldn't seek either, I think
Yeah.
that people don't necessarily think about like, wouldn't it happen if you were ready for it and it served you at that moment? And if it's not happening, it doesn't serve you in this moment, and maybe it's not what you need right now. And so maybe you just kind of, and I don't know, because there's some sort of balance where you don't, it's like you still like want to direct your life somehow and have goals and visions and, try to like aim for something. But at the same time, I feel like getting too like
Yeah.
attached, to that you're like, I don't know, emotional about it, that maybe you can kind of just like, just know that it'll happen when you need it. It's like that thing, the teacher will appear when the student is ready. I've always found that's absolutely true. I always find a teacher that's exactly what I needed, exactly at the moment that I needed it. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. Like, but the thing is, there has to be some understanding, because the thing is, okay, we understand that intent is a big part of like manifesting. Intent is a big part of like understanding what it is one desire. Just because you desire something or want something, that doesn't necessarily mean you deserve it in
Yeah.
any way. Like, one has to work towards something. One has to prove oneself. And like, I am into what is called vipassana meditation. So I've done like many courses of vipassana. I practice vipassana every day. But the basis of vipassana, they say, there's shila, samadhi, and panya. Shila, samadhi, panya. So those are the three pillars, you can say, but actually they're also foundations. Shila is about morality. Don't worry about spirituality if you don't have morality.
Yeah.
Work on your morality. What is morality? And they have, I mean, what is morality to anybody? Like, should you kill? Should you lie? Should you like do this? Should you get drunk or whatever? There's so many, categories of morality. Can you practice good morality? Can you practice perfect morality? Then you can work on concentration, because it's like building your body. You're not going to lift, 200 pounds unless you lift 150 pounds first,
Yeah.
obviously, right? So like, then you can work on samadhi, which is concentration. That means, can you sit with yourself? Can you sit in a cave, or can you sit by yourself even for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, and you're okay with yourself, and you don't feel bored and agitated and have to like move around and shake around and be like, all like, I need some stimulation.
Yeah.
I need I need this and this. There's so many things, and then the last thing is wisdom, panya, and that's like a very high level of awareness, the very high level of consciousness, you can say,
Yeah.
and in Buddhism, they don't have any concern for magic or like this manifestation stuff. They don't care at all, because the thing is, people want some kind of superpower. Like, you watch all these like Marvel movies and be like, oh, I want to fly around, and I want. But actually, the greatest superpower one can achieve is to control one's own mind.
Hell yeah.
That is the greatest superpower. Your
Absolutely.
mind is like a monkey. it's got stung by a scorpion and it's jumping around from branch to branch, and you can't even concentrate for 5 seconds. And
Dude.
that's kind of the world that we have come to,
Yes.
you know?
That's what I worry about is I feel like I always say, like, don't go deeper. Like, we've already gone so deep in this simulation, whatever you want to call it. Don't go even deeper. You know, people are doing like VR headsets now. And I'm like, no, stop. Like, don't go deeper. Your mind is already so like fractionalized in this space. And like, I don't know how many people listening out there have even tried to do what you're talking about and just sit with yourself silently somewhere for an extended period of time and notice your mind. Just observe it. Don't do like, you know, there's all these like they're cool. Do whatever meditations you want. But like, you know, the one meditation that I think is really awesome, especially for a beginner, is to just sit and notice, like, what is my brain doing? And dude, it's wild. You're like, well, I have like 5 songs simultaneously playing and like 65 thoughts and like all this shit from the present and all this shit from the past and all this shit from the future, and it's all like clamoring. And even if I could possibly let all that go, I'm still like noticing every single thing that happens, everything around me. It's like, how could you even find silence? You know, it's like practically impossible. That is a superpower.
Yeah, and your mind is created, you know, for that purpose. I mean, it has so much power and creative ability, and it has such memory that it can store so much information. And you are only aware of fractal or fraction. Bit. I mean, of little tiny bit. But actually, there's so much around you that's being recorded all around you all the time by your mind, and it's being stored there like blockchain almost. Like it's just being stored there, and you can access it. But if you have no control, because the mind always requires stimulation, and it always needs something to kind of like occupy it. Otherwise, it starts to go in all kinds of directions. And I think of the brain as like a computer like chip. Like some people have like a faster chip or a slower chip, but that doesn't necessarily mean better. Like, imagine yourself. What if you can remember everything every moment?
No.
Like, you go to a subway and you remember meeting people, and then like a week later, it's like, I remember these people from last week or last month, and then
or yesterday.
Like, what's the point of that memory?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of that? You know, there has to be a reason for remembering something, and I don't know. It's an individual battle.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell you because you're living in your own world.
True.
You're living in your own world.
But I think it's fascinating that you, as you start to have various practices, I think you will probably agree, you start to have sort of like successes or whatever, right? Like you start to see glimpses and you're like, oh, wow, this is actually really amazing. And it's also, I think, you know, it's like you were ready for it at that time and you had that experience or whatever. You were capable of it finally, and so you had that experience. But I also find that almost like the opposite thing where like you'll get to a certain point and something will like purposely come along and kind of like poke you and be like, are you sure? Like, do you really do that? Are you really there now? Like, or is this just sort of like very tenuous right now? Right? And it's almost like a challenge will appear. Right. Like when you were talking about morality, I was thinking of that. Like you might think you're like a moral person and you like got to a certain place where you're like, yeah, I'm like pretty moral now. And then something comes along and is like, here's like the hardest challenge I can find for you to prove your morality. Like, are you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's perfect, right? Like that's like the best school you could ask for, is one that's like perfectly attuned to your both like your successes that you need, but also your like challenges that you need.
And it's coming in all directions, you know, like it's happening in all ways, like the kind of people that you meet, kind of people that you're interacting with, you know, kind of relationship that you create. And we're gonna rub some shoulders. You know, we're gonna our egos are gonna touch, you know, and we're gonna assert ourselves, and it's gonna be a part of that process of finding out what we're about, finding out what the right thing is, finding out what the other person is about, and how to deal with that, you know, because like sometimes we become, and we all have become a little too big for our britches, right? We need to admit to that and be like, okay, you know, like we need to be able to laugh at ourselves sometimes.
Totally.
Because hey, and once you are able to laugh at yourself and be like, I messed up there, that doesn't mean you're not going to mess up. You're going to have a million more mess ups.
Yeah, you're not done.
It's not about the mess up.
Right.
You're not done, but it's about how you get up, how you respond, not react, how you respond to those situations as they arise. Because response means that you're aware what's going on, but to react means that you're not aware. To react means you're robotic.
I literally just had this in a Gnostic lecture I was listening to yesterday. That was one of the main points that the lecture was about, was the difference between responding and reacting, and how 97% or more of people, 97% or more of the time, are just reacting. It is very robotic and asleep and unaware. And if you can get to the point where you're actually responding in every moment, it's almost like we were talking about earlier. Like if you could be fully present and aware in each moment, like then that's, responding, but it's actually very difficult and very rare. I was like, wow, that's fascinating. I've never really like thought about, do I react or do I respond? And obviously that means I'm reacting probably most of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and that 97% statistic is like a wheel where like you may be responding sometimes, but 97% of the time that you're, and we have to put ourselves in that category. It's not like that one individual who might be your friend or who might be your family member, they could be responding to you, but a lot of the times they're just reacting to things.
Right.
I mean, forgive them for they know not what they do, right? Forgive them for they know not what they do, but at the same time, have boundary. You care for this body, do you not? Do you care not for your space, do you not? So be mindful of that, and put you in a spot where you are safe, where you are protected. But at the same time, don't be too afraid to interact with people, because that's where you're going to get the responses, not the reactions. That's where you want to be when we are responding to each other.
I love it. It's awesome. Well, I guess we should start to head towards a wind down, but I wanted to ask you a few kind of general questions about like society and the world and whatever. And so one of the things I'm wondering what you think about is what do you think is like the weakest or most destructive aspect of society?
Oh, the weakest or the most destructive part of society.
Or the weakest or most destructive part of whatever it is that makes society have such negativity sometimes.
Probably somewhere along the lines of pride and vanity would be a big part of everything, because we have, it's just the same thing, just expressed in a different form, pride and vanity. But I would say that actually to me, we call in Sanskrit they call it samskara, okay, and in Pali they call it sankaras. Basically, it's big conditioning. It's big scars. Some are like lines on the sand where it's there for a little while, and the ocean comes and washes over. But some scars are so deep. Some conditioning, some habits become so deep that you need to really, really like work on yourself. They've been chiseled into stone, okay, and we've collected all this, and it's actually all in our muscles, all these emotional energy, all these memories. Our has memory, our stomach has memories, of course we have memories up here. There's a lot of like memories that is stored in this holographic form, and it's amazing how much information that it can be stored. It's not just a function that can see. There's a lot more to it than that, okay? And all these things in terms of like negativity is concerned, okay? Because where does it come from? Well, from the Buddhist practice, it's more like, to me, okay, this is my interpretation. I just kind of throw that out as a caveat.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of craving and a lot of aversion. So we crave for many things, like crave for love, crave for attention, crave for, tasty things, right? So there's one aspect of that, craving, okay? But the other aspect of that is, other side of the coin is aversion. We avert away from that is painful. To find a balance, which is called equanimity. Equanimity is the balance in which that these are the two opposite end of like a sine wave, and then as the sine wave like kind of to flatten the curve in another way to say this, right? To flatten the curve, that you experience what's called equanimity. The thing is, a lot of this comes from like this ideal of pride. This pride is like, I deserve, this kind of entitlement aspect. This is all a part of it. So that's why I think the core aspect of that is like pride and vanity, where like, hey, I deserve something. What do you deserve? What is it that you deserve? For what? You know, I want to be recognized. For what do you want to be recognized for? What is it that you can share? What is it that you've done or can say, or whatever, that you feel that you deserve recognition, you know? So we go on there and do all kinds of stuff and play games, and on the internet we're playing games all the time, but and we all are hungry for attention. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong to share or to, you know, give attention or, you know, gain attention. But what is the ultimate message? Is it for you? Is it about you? Or is it for something else that is actually beyond you? And if it's just about you, then that's pride, that's vanity. Then if it's something beyond you, that you become like the finger in which to point, that is grander than you, then it's less about you. Then there's a little less pride involved. That's kind of what I would say about that.
That's an awesome answer, and it's tripping me out the whole time you were talking, because that same exact Gnostic lecture that I was listening to yesterday was actually about equanimity. It was about the sign of Libra, and then, you know,
Okay.
astrologically, and it went into all of the things that you just touched on, in the exact
Yes.
same way that you described it. And while I was listening to it, I was like, I think that this is something that we're going to talk about tomorrow, you know, when I talk with Nachiketa. And here we are talking about it, and I did not even plan for it or mean to, so it's tripping me out. And also, as you're talking about the sine curve, my first novel, this is just a shameless plug, is called Sine Curve of Aeons, and it also addresses a lot of these ideas. And a sequel to that is about to come out, so if anybody out there is listening and has read it or wants to read it, it's available at rogueways.org or on Amazon, and the sequel will be around soon. But I absolutely agree with you, and I think that, you know, the best place we can get in life, and this is another thing I think you have the possibility of having like a false, just like we were talking about earlier with this sort of, you know, new age sort of thing where, you know, you think you're a certain way. I think that there are people who can then convince themselves that, like, I am doing this all in service of other people. It's not about me at all, but it is still very much about them. But at the very least, if you actually are affecting other people and doing some service, it's at least, like you were saying, like minimize somewhat. And I think that that's a good goal, at least, because I think just like everything else we've talked about, actually getting to the place where it is completely selfless would be, you know, an amazing feat. It'd be a superhuman.
It's a tall order.
Yeah, it's a good thing to aim for, and to like kind of be aware of like where you're at within it and be honest about. But and that was sort of the end of that lecture. Just while that word came out just now, was like, if as long as you are like literally capable of being actually honest with yourself, you will always arrive at that place, you know. But if you can't first start with honesty, then there's no hope at all. Like there's none.
Yeah, really, there is no hope. There's no hope at all, because being authentic, being genuine, this is something that's really missing in this world more than anything else, and especially in the world of internet and Facebook and all this kind of stuff. People have lost a sense of accountability, you know, because nobody really knows you, you know, like you are still like a human being, and you need to progress in a way. And when we throw out this false pride out there, you know, like I'm not saying you shouldn't feel good about yourself
No.
for having done something wonderful,
feel accomplished,
you know?
or
And
something.
I think it's great to, yeah, and it's great to have that balance, you know. And when I talk about pride, I'm talking about false pride. I'm talking about false vanity, like too many layers to present yourself, and it actually turns into deception.
Yeah.
And very hardcore deception, and a lot of what this pyramid system that we're living in, a lot of it is actually built on the ideal of truth, but it has no truth in it whatsoever. This idea, this word, like community, liberty, and freedom, that those words been thrown out there over and over again for revolutions.
Yeah.
Not just one revolution, but French Revolution to American Revolution, whatever
Every
revolution,
single,
you know. But though, yeah, and the thing is, people go take those words and they each take their own meaning of that, but nobody can define what is it that you think freedom is, what is it that you think liberty is, what is it that you think community is. And
Right.
because we need these things, we need a community. We
Yeah,
really do. We really need
absolutely.
it more than anything else. You need a little bubble of your people
Yes.
where people can gather together and start like building for themselves and think for themselves. And yes, you still need to go and farm, and you still need to eat
Hmm.
and drink water. You need the basics.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you just sit around and do nothing. There's no laziness involved, but you are not like contributing to wars anymore. You're not contributing to the system because we're all unknowingly actually doing that by paying our taxes and all that. I'm not saying don't pay taxes. Nobody's saying that.
Yeah.
But like, if the money goes around and does things. Okay, it has ability to go around and do things.
It's like its own little demon. um, so
It is.
then
Yeah.
to balance
And the
that, yeah, to balance that all out, what do you think are the strongest and best aspects of society?
humility, human like empathy, compassion, being able to understand another human being has consciousness, has feelings, has and that's what empathy means, is that yes, we are in a way living in our own world. Yes, in a way that we're like living in the construct of our own brain, and we're programmed and all this stuff. But to see another person and to imagine what that person is going through, and you can see your own pain and you can see your own
Uh-oh.
and
We lost you if you're still there. Oh no. Well, hopefully Nachiketa is gonna. Oh,
and kind of
you're back.
oh, sorry. Okay,
You
I
cut out.
froze or you froze. Yeah.
All right, we're back though. We lost most of what you were saying.
Okay. I all I
Go
was
on.
saying is that I think empathy is an important part of compassion and empathy, love. These are
Yeah.
the strongest human emotions, and we're very lucky, and I'm very lucky to have experienced many different forms of that love. And love is a
Yes.
big word. Love is a very, very big word. I mean, I love ice cream, or I love whatever, but then there's a greater and greater definition of that love, and to grow into those greater and greater definitions of love is part of my journey anyway.
Yeah, I mean that when you're saying that, it reminds me of that word, vistari, expanding, right? Ever
Yeah,
expanding sort of
yeah, yeah,
concentric circles of love.
yeah, yeah. We live in energy and vibration and frequency, right? And so love has compassion, has a vibration of its own, just
Absolutely.
like hate or fear. They all have vibrations.
And they're all attracting and repelling and as we
Yeah, it's
go.
like cymatics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, where do you hope to head from here? What do you hope to do next? Or where are you kind of going? Or is there anything that you want to let people know about in the coming up?
Oh no, not really. I'm just a caveman in a hut, and I do my own thing. So like don't there's not like I live in my own world, and I really enjoy being here. My lifestyle is very simple. I like to I go on the internet and go to different channels and chat with people and stuff. I think we're all on the same page. I mean, like the way we met, and I want to shout out to Sue Finelli
Sue.
for allowing us to meet.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
And Sue
She's giving you all kinds of emojis right
actually
now.
like I oh sweet. I haven't been in the chat at all, so I
Yeah.
apologize for that because I like to really focus on the person who is interviewing me. But like Sue uh, heard about me on another channel called Rip and Rabbit Hole,
Oh, cool.
and the guy who is doing the Rip and Rabbit Hole, he is from Ripon, Wisconsin, where
Wow.
I'm from. I'm also from Ripon, Wisconsin, and he has his own channel and radio program. We're both Mandela affected,
Wow.
and we're really very much into Mandela effect. And Sue was over there, and Sue's uncle lives in Ripon, Wisconsin,
Oh,
so
yeah. She was saying
so
that.
she has a little bit of a connection. Yeah, she has a connection to me. So like her uncle actually was a faculty member, you know, during the time that my father was a professor
Oh,
there.
wow.
And what's also interesting is that her uncle's son was a classmate of AJ, who is the Ripon Rabbit Hole.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So a lot of synchronicities going on there.
Yeah, how cool. And then a lot for me too, but on different in different ways. Is that person who does that podcast, did you know them already, or they you guys found each other some other way?
No, no, no. I just met him. I think February of this year
Wow.
through a channel, Brian Stavely channel. Like I follow Brian quite a bit,
Oh yeah.
Brian was invited to Ripon Rabbit Hole. Like Ripon Rabbit Hole had like a panel where he invited a bunch of people to discuss about the Mandela effect, and Brian aired it, and I was like, Ripon. I only know of one Ripon. So the next day, Brian premiered this panel discussion, and then Ripon Rabbit Hole was there, and we were discussing like, hey, I'm from Ripon, Wisconsin, and he's like, oh, hey, I'm from Ripon, Wisconsin, and then I was like, oh, because there's only one family where they were adopting Koreans
Yeah.
in Ripon, you know, they were only, and he knows my sister, so we were like, oh, why, like we know each
Wow.
other, gosh. And then I emailed my sister, and then she's like, yeah, I know AJ, blah blah, he's a great guy, blah blah, and then so we've just
Wow.
been like, wow,
That's so cool.
crazy stuff.
That's somebody I grew up
Yeah.
with actually has just gotten in touch with me, and he's like, "Do you realize how many people from our hometown are like doing sort of what you're doing, or like in the truth community or the alternative community, and like going down all these rabbit holes?" And I was like, "No," and he's like listing them all. I'm like, "Wow, I didn't even know our community is like done this." So he's like, "You should put together a panel and the same sort of thing, like all the people from our hometown who
Yeah.
are in this
Why
community."
not?
I was like, "That's a fantastic idea." But getting everyone
Yeah.
on the same page on the same day and the same time is
That'd be
like
awesome.
a challenge, but I think I could pull it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so
Why not?
if people wanted to connect more with you, is there a place they should go, or any contact information that you want to share, or do they just kind of find you in various chats around? Or
I mean, yeah, I mean, I do have my personal email up on my. I have a small YouTube channel. I only have like I think 600 subs or something like this, and I just make videos just talking about current issues or whatever I'm thinking. And if people are curious, they can leave a comment or they can email me. I don't know, like whatever. Like random people have emailed me, I respond. It's not like I have a huge channel.
Yeah.
So if they're curious about me and they want to talk to me, I'm happy to share whatever information that I have.
Awesome.
Whatever. Yeah.
So would they just search
Go ahead and
Nachiketa
do that. Yeah.
on YouTube?
Yeah, they can go to and then they can go to YouTube, and if they find my channel, you see a guy in an orange shirt with a sword, that's me, and Asian guy looking like me, that's gonna be me.
That's me.
And then you can go to about page, and then you can see my email there, so they can get a hold of me if they really need to get a hold of me. That is.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm not gonna respond to like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" And I'm like, "Not much."
Yeah.
Like, what do you want?
What do you want? Right.
Let's talk about something. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Come with a proposal or like something, or give me something to go off of. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah. So I always like to ask people at the end then what their final words of wisdom are. What sort of idea do you want to leave people with as we shut things down?
Well, it's hard because I don't want to like funnel people into a direction, but I think it's like for me, I like to think about like the various manifestation of the concept of God, for example. I think that's an important aspect of this reality. This reality is God is a part of this reality, and we are a part of God, and all this kind of stuff, and then go deeper and deeper into that idea is important. And I think it's good to just develop a good sense of gratitude. Like gratitude is a huge part of actually, to me, that is actual showing. That is the actual like emotional expression of like having a clear understanding or more clear understanding that you are a part of it all, that it's a gift. And it's a gift that you've been given, this ability, this time, this energy that because it will go.
Yeah.
It will go in an instant. You don't know when it's going to go. You have no, like, you can have all kinds of plans, but all these plans, they get dashed. They get dashed on the seashore of ego and pride and all this stuff. And then all you're going to be left with humility. And go there in genuine humility and humbleness, and find that gratitude within yourself. And then once you do, it becomes like a little tiny piece of jewel that is of such value that you always keep it for yourself. It's a really, really important part of my life anyway, to try to be in understanding of all that.
Amen and well said. And I'll just add that is something that you can intentionally practice and create in yourself if you don't feel like you have enough, right?
Yes, you can do it. You can absolutely cultivate more and more of it to yourself and draw more of that into yourself. And then, we have a lot of confidence issues and self-esteem issues with all kinds of stuff. When you have that gratitude, everything else starts to fall away. Actually,
yes.
You won't care about it.
Absolutely. Amen. Well, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom. According to Nachiketa. Nachiketa, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's been an excellent experience to talk with you.
Well, thank you very much, Lindsay, and namaste to you.
Namaste. Movement is the most fundamental aspect of existence. It is just another word for change, and the only constant is change. We exist in the constant state of moving from one space to another, from one idea to another, from one state of being to another, and from one level of consciousness to another. We are never static, and if we were, how would we know what it is to know? We experience and know precisely because of the contrast and juxtaposition of the differing characteristics from one aspect to another, no matter which sensory experience we consider. Breathe in the change, breathe out whatever is stale. Embrace the movement and resist the stagnation. And until you learn to flow forever in the streams of change without any resistance, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Nasty motherfuckers with a hook and a sickle. Brought to you advertisement, bone plated nickel. Fire rate automatic smash from the get-go. Snack on the whack fermented flesh disco. Abracadabra, archaic altars don't slabber. Hey, making jabbers with reality backwards. Hunting rap nerds, bodyguard collected actors. Munitions are famished, let them feast upon the dapper. Bloody bibs and muddy kicks, feasting on amygdala. Iron fist, tyrant shit, APO will rip you up. The rhyme rainmaker, vein style backbreaker. Genghis Khan depleted uranium satellite lasers. Cloaked in anonymity, I know you never heard of me. No rusted tools used for Crowley style surgery.
Dissect a whole set, God body. God taught me to dissect the whole body. When it gets sloppy, I'ma get there. Rhymes rare like steak, get crushed like Christ to create 52 states. And it's Baghdad, dust to towels, no rags. Straight milk dash, dust to ash. Turbans while the niggas perkin'. It's on purpose, my service touches the sun's surface. And rainbows touch serpents. My light all night shines so bright. I'm a star for eons, Hollywood's for peons. Cause they try to copy the same shit we on. Hey, I ain't done yet. Lungs depleted and can't breathe, can't believe it. Trying to seek it while trying to peep it. It's a secret. Now you're nobody. Label somebody. Trying to claim John Gotti. It's yours truly, God body.